Hello, this is EJK, and this video, or these two videos that I will be going over, is going to be about Innovation's mech that he played in Shoutcraft earlier this week. He played this TvZ mech game, and then he played a TvP mech game against Hurricane. And I will be going over many points, such as why this strategy is good, things that the Zerg player could have done to tailor his build to be better against what Innovation was doing, some weak points in Innovation's build that had gone unnoticed by the Zerg player as well, and just the overall flow of the game and what Innovation's thinking in this game on Frost. Now, one thing that Innovation goes for that I find very interesting is going for Tech Lab off the factory right away, or like a reactor into a factory in a Tech Lab. And so if the Zerg player scouts this, he's not going to know if it's Cyclones or Siege Tanks, I suppose. Innovation tends to make a Cyclone first, so even if the Zerg player, or unless the Zerg player specifically knows that Innovation always makes a Cyclone out of the Tech Lab, he can't really try to punish. Excuse me. He can't try to punish this Tech Lab opener, like the lack of Hellions. He can't make a bunch of Speedlings and then try to run them through and do damage, because if it's a tank, then Innovation will get the better end of that trade. The standard thing that Zerg players tend to do in this matchup currently is to go up to, I don't know, like a 5 to 7 Queen defense and get a fast Overlord speed as well to scout out what the opponent is doing. And so what this timing also is accomplishing is it's kind of an anti-timing to the Zerg player that go for speed with their Overlords. So Overlord speed just finished now. We see on the minimap that PandaBear is not scouting what Innovation is doing. So right off the bat, he should know that it's a 2-factory build before the 4-minute mark, because Overlord speed is done. However, he is not aware of that. That's why we see 2 Evolution Chambers going down instead of, say, a earlier Roach Warren. And that's just a bit of a scouting error by PandaBear. Innovation isn't really doing anything special. I think if this was scouted, PandaBear would have had a much easier time to react. And now he sees it, but his 2 Evo Chambers already done. He's almost at, I think, about 5 Queens, and so far not really too much has changed up about his build, except that his Roach Warren is a lot slower. And having a slower Roach Warren doesn't mean that you're going to outright die to this kind of Cyclone Hellion pressure, but it just means that you'll have to make Roaches and Lings to defend against this pressure. Now, making Lings against this unit composition isn't the worst thing in the world. Cyclones are not very fat. Well, Cyclones in this patch are somewhat okay units. They're somewhat fast, but Lings can still surround them, and if Cyclones are surrounded, they're just going to die in a corner. Only 3 Cyclones and 4 Hellions. 4 Hellions is nowhere near enough firepower to kill about 20 Lings, or to kill a flank if PandaBear was able to set something up. So now he's finally kind of like quote-unquote held it. His drone saturation has been delayed. Innovation's only on 2 bases though. 2 base Econ versus 2 base Econ, but Innovation having mules means that he's in a favorable spot economically. PandaBear's tech is also slightly delayed. The layer, of course, only just started right after the 5-minute mark. And then losing all these Lings here, that's a big larvae hit that just kind of went away for free. The creep spread also isn't as strong as it could be, but that's mostly due to the fact that PandaBear took too long to scout Innovation. If he scouted him 30 seconds earlier, he would have been able to plant an additional tumor, or at least a couple additional tumors, and having a good creep spread helps buy a lot of time for these kinds of pushes. So now Innovation is doing an armory push. He's pushing right before Blue Flame is finished. If PandaBear had made a lot more Roaches earlier, he would have been able to hold this relatively easily. He still is able to push this away even with just the roaches and lings, but he's only at 45 workers. So he's still not in a good spot. And this is mostly coming down to the fact that a lot of his production has been in lings instead of drones and potentially roaches. And he's also floating a lot of minerals as well. So not only is his production subpar compared to innovations, but also his macro capability isn't as strong as it would be. Imagine 200 minerals worth of lings, or like even 300, just create in a perfect position ready to flank that forest, and all of a sudden innovation's lead would be gone. Me is adding 2 hack trees to kind of substitute for they're kind of bandages that you can put on to catch up in macro, and he's now just droning up, but he's been down by like a good 10 workers, 5 to 10 workers for the past couple minutes. So at this point in the game, Innovation has a almost decisive advantage, and also being on 3 bases. His gas is at his 3 bases and his main. He's ahead by 3 gas income compared to Panda Bear Me. So that's saying something, being up in 100% gas output against a Zerg player, and you're going mech. That's a very very strong lead. So focusing more on what Innovation is thinking, he still has a relatively large Hellion and Cyclone force, and one thing that he's missing, it's 8 minutes into the game, he doesn't have a single starport unit, let alone even a starport. That's right, he's been going on pure factory units for the past 8 minutes. Now I would say that is a pretty glaring disadvantage, not having any starport units such as Liberators, or yeah, pretty much Liberators for defense. Even medevacs to pick up tanks is alright. Like doing tank evac harass in this stage of the game can be very powerful. Mutalisks you don't really have to worry about at this stage of the game if you've done enough damage to the Zerg player, or forced out enough units and force him to make other kind of units other than Mutalisks by not playing a passive game. Now we see the 2 starports going up and the 4th base, and we see +1 armor as well. So Innovation deciding to stick to 1 armory, and he's also prioritizing the armor upgrade over the ground upgrade, even though he does have only factory production right now, which I think is a I'm not really sure his reasoning, but I'm also not completely convinced that this is a good thing either. I'm basically on the fence, and it could be good, it could be bad, I just have no idea. What I will say, though, is that it's definitely not optimizing what he has in play right now, because he has 15 Hellbats and 12 tanks, and they all have only the armor upgrade. So all of its sieged up tanks aren't getting that extra +5 to their siege attack against armored, and they get a +3 attack to non-armored units. I believe it's a 10% increase to both the non-armored attack shell and then the armored damage. Panda Bear Me's tech is extremely slow because of how things were going out. His Hydroden hasn't finished, his Infestation Pit hasn't finished, which means he doesn't have a hive. Innovation is basically maxed out right now. So at this point in the game, unless you're setting yourself up for counterattacks and for some sort of base trade to buy more time for additional tech or units to get out as a Zerg player, you're essentially dead. Counterattacks can be fairly strong if you're in a much better economic advantage and you have a stronger creep spread. Creep spread of Panda Bear Me is almost non-existent. 11 minutes into the game, he has like about a half-dozen tumor spread going out in a couple directions, but that's about it. I think that should be closer to 9 to 10. Like if he needs to be able to get past the watchtower before this push happens, and by controlling the watchtower, it slows down this push considerably and buys a lot of time for waiting for reinforcements to arrive. Innovation doing a good job of slowly pushing forward. Again, to take note of the anti-air, there's 2 Liberators and there's about 6 or 7 Cyclones. So Mass Mutalisk switch on Layer Tech, if the Zerg had a better economy, would have been able to deal with this unit composition. But currently, Roach Hydra is the only option that the Zerg player has, the only option that they can afford. And using the creep spread to create flanks to outflank the Liberators and the siege tanks is the best way you can deal with this. The flank coming a bit too late with the creep spread already dissipated, and the main brunt of the army of Panda Bear Me already defeated. So Innovation is able to take this game away. He's getting 4 Liberators. I believe he just didn't make tech labs on the starport. It would have been nice to see the game go on a bit longer, see how he deals with trying to take a 5th base on this map, what his late game plan is, because he's still only on 1 armory. He has 2 starports with tech labs, but we haven't seen a fusion, or he doesn't have the tech labs, and we haven't seen a fusion core either. So Innovation's game plan is very unthought out at this point in the game. Like he knows the game is over if he just keeps making units, so there's no reason to try to be fancy and do any tech switches or change anything up about his play. Yeah, GG is called. Good game. Very interesting TvZ game. Very nice to see Innovation finally seeing an EJK VOD and then being like, oh, I should try to copy this. Kappa.